We've all been on a night out where for one reason or another we just weren't feeling it. When you make that decision that getting home to your own bed is what you want, you just have to make a break for it. Imagine making that decision, longing for the warmth of your own bed, but instead stepping into one final nightmare, and then never making it home again. Viewer discretion is advised for this educational documentary. Welcome back to Case Documentaries. I bring you true crime, disturbing stories and other things that you may later regret knowing with regular uploads every week. Please do join the quickly growing Dark Case family by hitting subscribe now and turning on notifications. Thank you so much to all of my patrons. If your name is on screen right now, then you're a legend. Our love and respect goes out to all those that knew and loved Samantha and all those affected by this dark case. Samantha Josephson was born in 1998 in Princeton, New Jersey. She was born into a tight-knit family and had an unbreakable bond with her sister, Sydney. Sydney was her closest ally and first best friend growing up. The two then remained close even into their college years. Samantha started at the University of South Carolina in 2015. There she majored in political science and hoped to one day get a job in government, hoping to advise policymakers and shape the future of the country. That was the kind of person that she was. During her time at college, she met Greg Corbishley. The couple were a perfect match. They shared a love of sports and food, and were more often than not chatting away in their own bubble. Samantha was also a member of the Alpha Gamma Delta sorority. There she was known for her infectious personality. Everyone seemed to like Samantha, and Samantha liked everyone else too. By the time 2019 rolled away, Samantha found herself in her final year. She was on the cusp of a major transition in her life, knowing that it was just a few short months before her and her friends would bid college life farewell. They were therefore determined to make the most of their remaining time on campus. They wanted to make every night count. On March the 29th, 2019, Samantha asked Greg to drive down and spend the night with her. Greg had already graduated a year prior and now lived in Mount Pleasant, about 2 hours away. But despite the distance between them, Greg and Samantha were determined to make it work. And amazingly, they actually grew closer than ever before. Although they weren't meant to see each other that weekend, Samantha had gotten some bad news about the health of a close family member, so understandably she was feeling low and needed support. She knew that Greg would be the one to cheer her up. Greg did want to be by her side, but unfortunately already had plans. However, he promised to see her in a day or two. He didn't want her to be alone at a time like this, so he suggested that she go out with her friends that evening, a way of temporarily taking her mind off of things, forgetting about her troubles. Although she wasn't in the mood to party, Greg's suggestion made sense. She really didn't want to be alone. So indeed, she called up her friends and then they hit the town. 5 Points, Columbia to be exact. At around 12:30 AM, Samantha and her friends arrived at the Bird Dog in 5 Points. This was a go-to spot for USC students where they could socialize, have drinks and even listen to live music. The music was indeed pumping and the atmosphere was electric, but Samantha just wasn't in the mood. She was withdrawn and kind of distant. On that night, she was more interested in her phone than the company around her. As the night wore on, Samantha found herself drifting further away from her group of friends. And then, before she even realized what was happening, she became separated from them. She simply used this as a sign to call it a night. This sounds like probably a good idea. Samantha made her way out of the bar shortly after 2 a.m. She then called Greg to let him know that she was on her way home. She lived only a couple of miles away. She ordered an Uber to pick her up. While she waited for the car to arrive, she chatted to Greg. This wait only took around 6 minutes or so. The black Chevrolet Impala pulled up next to Samantha. But before the driver could even fully halt their vehicle, Samantha jumped into the bay and pulled the car's right rear passenger door open. She then got into the car, closing the door behind her. This car set off almost immediately, driving south on Harding Street. Her boyfriend, Greg, noticed that something wasn't quite right with Samantha's journey. He was tracking her journey via Track My Friends, and he noticed Samantha was travelling in the opposite direction of where her flat was actually located. He then understandably tried to make contact with her, but he just couldn't get through. Greg knew that something was extremely off, but he tried to convince himself that there was a real rational explanation for all of this. She probably just left her phone in the Uber and was safe at home and in bed. But when the next morning came around, and there was still no word from Samantha, Greg just knew that something was wrong. He knew that Samantha had a shift at work lined up, so he decided to call her manager, hopeful that she made it in on time. When the manager responded that Samantha never came to work, Greg's concerns immediately grew. He knew that this was a serious situation. He then called several of her friends, and when they too confirmed that they hadn't heard from Samantha, he convinced them to file a missing persons report, and he himself immediately set off for USC. He reached out to all of her friends, and then together they went to the Bird Dog bar where she was last seen. Greg convinced the manager to allow him to view the CCTV footage of the night before. It didn't take long for him to spot Samantha on the footage, and after confirming that she left in the black Impala, Greg took the footage to the local police station. He hoped that his swift action could assist in finding Samantha alive and well. But by the time Greg got to the police station with the footage in hand, it was already too late. The search for Samantha Josephson was already over. Police had already discovered her body just a few hours prior, 65 miles from where the black Impala picked her up the previous evening. She had been viciously attacked, her body riddled with more than 120 marks made from a sharp implement. And in that very moment, Greg realised that when he tracked the location updates on Samantha's phone that night, he was actually witnessing her kidnapping as it happened.
The people who live in New Zion are shocked Samantha Josephson's body was found right in their community. According to the people who live here, the man charged with her murder used to live right down the road where her body was found.
Police quickly confirmed that Samantha's original Uber driver cancelled her request. He did this after he was unable to locate her. So if this wasn't her Uber, whose Chevrolet Impala had she gotten into? The police combed through the CCTV footage from cameras in that area, carefully examining the footage frame by frame, desperately tracing its movements. The analysis of the surveillance footage eventually yielded a disturbing discovery. The black Impala had been lurking around the 5 Points area for at least 25 minutes before picking up Samantha. Footage showed the vehicle driving up and down a number of times, possibly in search of a victim. When the driver eventually spotted Samantha standing outside alone, he made a U-turn and then drove up towards her. As he approached the spot where Samantha was waiting, he saw her trying to get into another vehicle, a vehicle that she mistook to be her Uber. It was clear that this driver just took his chance. For the police, there was no doubt that the driver of the Impala had some really tough questions to answer. They sent out a be on the lookout or BOLO alert to all units in the area to be on the lookout for a black Chevy Impala, and they didn't have to wait very long. At 3:23 on March the 30th, a mere 26 hours after Samantha's disappearance, a patrolling police officer spotted a vehicle matching the description of the BOLO alert. The car was spotted less than a quarter of a mile from the bird dog, the very bar where Samantha was last seen alive. The officer followed the vehicle for a couple of minutes, before eventually flashing his lights and signalling for the driver to pull over. Initially, the driver seemed to be quite cooperative. This is the real body cam footage from that arrest.
What's going on, sir? You got your license? You got your license on you? I'm also Craddock. Call me police former K9. No, no license on you. Why not? All right, man. Who's smoking the marijuana?
I had smoked some earlier, sir, when I was at home.
All right. All right, man. You're going to have to step on out, man. All right, here's the deal, man. I pulled your car over because it matches the suspect. Get your hand in your pocket. What are you, crazy? Get over here. Hey, get over here. Go and run. Hey, I'm gonna release the dog. I can't. I was just gonna see if he'll stop. Bravo Mike wearing a gray sweatpants, gray sweatshirt. Walk him up. Doors blocked, the 500 block. Nunez, keep going. He's going to be on your left.
The driver of the car was 24-year-old Nathaniel Roland. Nathaniel had a number of charges against him. Most were small-time traffic violations, such as not wearing a seatbelt and having an open alcohol container in his car. But it was a 2018 offence that caught the attention of the officers. Nathaniel was allegedly one of two men who hijacked a woman at a traffic light, before then forcing her to drive to an ATM. Here they withdrew all the money from her account before then assaulting her, and then forcing her to drive to her own home. There they stole even more of her possessions before running away. The items were eventually found at a nearby pawn shop, and were subsequently tracked back to Nathaniel Roland. He was arrested and charged with obtaining goods under false pretenses, but these alleged carjacking and kidnapping charges didn't stick. Would he be so lucky in the case of Samantha Josephson? The evidence painted a much clearer and much more disturbing picture. A large amount of blood was found in the trunk of his vehicle, as well as on the passenger seat. Samantha's mobile phone was found in the glove compartment of the car. This provided irrefutable evidence linking Nathaniel and his car to the crime. A search of Nathaniel's house uncovered even more damning evidence. They found a two-bladed sharp implement that contained Samantha's DNA, as well as a bandana and a sock stained with her DNA. Her DNA was also found under Nathaniel's fingernails. Nathaniel Roland was charged with kidnapping, murder, and possession of a weapon during the commission of a crime. Nathaniel Roland went on trial on July the 20th, 2021. The prosecution said on the night of the murder, Nathaniel was stalking the area for reasons unknown. After then spotting Samantha alone and on her phone trying to get into the back of another vehicle, a vehicle which she mistook for her Uber, Nathaniel, whose Impala was just 2 cars behind, took the opportunity to make his move. When Samantha was in his car, he activated the child safety lock. This meant the doors could only be opened from the outside. This effectively trapped Samantha in his car. It is not known if Samantha immediately realised that she was being kidnapped. Perhaps she was still blissfully unaware of what was about to happen. Even if she did realise what was happening, it would have been very difficult for people to hear her scream. There was loud music and chatter happening right outside the car window from the club. It was determined that Samantha had died in the vehicle that night. Nathaniel then transported her body to a field in New Zion, the field where she would be eventually discovered. This was only 3 miles from Nathaniel's parents' house. Samantha suffered more than 120 wounds made by a sharp implement. They were to her neck, back, torso, and lungs. The pathologist could not determine an exact number of wounds because there were just so many. The same pathologist also spoke of the blood loss. The human body normally has several litres of blood, but shockingly, Samantha's only contained 20 millilitres when she was found.
He is a very good young man, and when I talked to him, and I talked to him yesterday, and he told me, he said, that wasn't him, and I believe him. He said, that's not him.
Nate passed out at a house party.
Yeah.
He checked his pockets when he woke up. He checked his pockets, he didn't have his keys. So he walked outside to try to find his vehicle. He found the vehicle, opened the door, seen his keys, and seen all the blood inside the vehicle. But I can tell you one thing, my son is innocent.
Just a few hours after brutally murdering Samantha, Nathaniel was caught on CCTV cameras trying to withdraw money from her bank account. He visited 2 ATMs and attempted a total of 9 times. All of these were unsuccessful. He left the machines empty-handed. There was no defense for his actions, and there was no denying his guilt.
Is there anything you would like to say?
Your Honor, I know I'm innocent. But I guess what I know and what I think really doesn't matter. I just wish the state would have done more in finding out who the actual person was, instead of being satisfied with detaining me and proving my guilt.
On July the 27th, 2021, after just over 1 hour of deliberations, Nathaniel Roland was found guilty of the kidnapping and murder of Samantha Josephson. The judge told him,
I chose the word an avalanche of evidence, and now I've seen it repeated a few times. I've heard it repeated. But the evidence in this case was so overwhelming. The law enforcement in this case did the best job of investigating a case that I have seen over the past 30 or 40 years. Every law enforcement officer that was available participated apparently in working in this case. And if there were 1,000 roads, each road led to you. There's 1,000 trails, each trail led to you. All of the evidence, every speck of the evidence, not simply beyond a reasonable doubt, but as high a standard as the law requires, all points to your guilt. And I am absolutely satisfied. Is there anything you would like to say?
Your Honor, I know I'm innocent. But I guess what I know and what I think really doesn't matter. I just wish the state would have done more in finding out who the actual person was, instead of being satisfied with with detaining me and proving my guilt.
Roland was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He will never see freedom again. Do you think the punishment fits the crime here? What do you think could be done to avoid something like this happening again in the future? Please do let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Be careful out there, and I'll see you soon.